Right. A very warm welcome to our Commonwealth scholars, alumni, and partners joining us from across the world. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon from wherever you're joining us. My name is Lindah Mbaisi. I'm a Commonwealth alumni, 2023-2024. This is day 2 of the Interchange 26. And this is the afternoon session. Of course, there are other sessions after this one. You're very welcome. Today, we are talking about the power of equity, advancing fair trade and social enterprise for global prosperity. So this session basically explores equity, inclusion, and scaling social impact. So we will be centering lived experiences, practical lessons, and actionable pathways. So there is an opening session, and also we'll have a keynote speech. We will also have a panel discussion on breaking barriers, women, marginalized voices in social enterprises. And we will also have a conversation, my journey from scholarship to social entrepreneur. And then we will have closing remarks. So just to keep us updated about today's session, we will be having a Q&A tab. Please make use of it. Ask any questions to the panelists because we'll be having a panel discussion, or the speakers. If you have any questions, these questions will be moderated. Please upvote any questions which are of interest to you, and we look forward to seeing and responding to some of those questions. The closed captions are available in English by clicking the link in the chat box. The session will be recorded also, and it will be available after this event. So don't worry about getting some of the nice quotes. This session is recorded, and it will be available on the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission's website. If you have any issues, please drop a message into the lobby chat, and we will get back to you as soon as possible. And now, and now I would like to welcome Evangeline Arethwala, who is the Alumni Engagement Officer at the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission. A very warm welcome to you, Angeline.
Thank you so much, Linda, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope I'm audible. Good afternoon, everyone, and warm welcome to day 2 of Interchange 26. I'm Evangeline Arithwala. I'm the Alumni Engagement Officer with the CSE Alumni team. It is a real pleasure to be with you today and to engage with such an inspiring community of Commonwealth scholars and alumni. Yesterday, we heard speakers discuss about knowledge without borders, showing how research translation can unblock human potential and drive real-world impact. Across the networking sessions and the workshop, scholars and alumni connected in meaningful conversations, sharing experiences and the lessons learned that continue to shape their journeys. As we begin today's conversations, I want to reaffirm the Commonwealth Scholarship Commission's commitment to supporting scholars and alumni well beyond their scholarship. The Commission does not see the scholarship as the end of a journey, but as the beginning of a lifelong relationship. And remember, you are an alumnus for life. Today's theme focuses on scaling impact through social enterprise and inclusive entrepreneurship, with the hope that it drives meaningful change. While entrepreneurship is often celebrated as a driver of innovation and economic growth, we know that access to opportunities is not always equal. Across the Commonwealth, women and marginalized communities continue to face significant barriers, such as limited access to funding, to finance, to networks, markets, and decision-making spaces. Addressing these barriers is not optional, it is essential. Commonwealth scholars and alumni play a crucial role in addressing these challenges. You all lead innovate, and inspire change across the Commonwealth, and supporting your professional growth, entrepreneurial ambitions, and development impact sits at the heart of the Secretariat's mission. The Commission is committed to support entrepreneurial ambitions among scholars and alumni by creating opportunities to connect, learn, and collaborate. Through alumni networks, leadership opportunities, skills development initiative, and platforms such as Interchange, we help you turn your ideas into action and action into real-world challenge in change. We believe that entrepreneurship can be a powerful driver of development when it is rooted in inclusion, innovation, and social responsibility. Today's conversation is an opportunity to learn from real-world experiences, to hear from speakers about what it takes to grow social enterprises without losing sight of why they exist in the first place. It is also a reminder that you are not alone on this journey. As Commonwealth scholars and alumni, you are part of a global community that believes in shared learning, mutual support, and collective impact. During her speech yesterday, my colleague Sarah Leach rightly mentioned that the Commonwealth Scholars and Alumni community has always been a place where fresh perspectives thrive. And that is one of the greatest strengths of this network. And I could not have agreed more. In my role, I continue to meet alumni from across a wide range of disciplines who bring together innovation, academic expertise, and cross-cultural understanding to drive development impact. It has truly been inspiring to see how alumni are advancing their research to tackle key development challenges at both community and national levels, while also giving back to the CSE community through various opportunities like the mentoring program, the Development in Action webinar series, and events like these, Interchange26. As we move through day 2, I encourage you to engage with our speakers in meaningful dialogues on inclusive entrepreneurship and scaling impact. Ask questions with each other and contribute openly to discussions. I would like to end by saying social enterprise thrives when we learn from each other's errors as much as from our success. And when entrepreneurship is inclusive, it leads to stronger economies, more sustainable enterprises, and progress that benefits entire communities, not just a few. So thank you, and I look forward to the conversations ahead. I hope you all enjoy today's sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evangeline, and thank you for just reminding us that we are not alone, even as we try to build our social enterprises. I now want to invite James Nyamai. James Nyamai is the founder and CEO Bioafriq Energy Limited. He's also a Commonwealth alumnus, and James has done great work in climate smart innovations, scaling with integrity, and he's going to give us lessons from the field. Over to you, James.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Linda, and the great speech that we've been given. I am really glad to be here today just to share my experiences with regard to scaling impact across borders. I truly appreciate your availability for everyone, and your willingness to engage in this conversation will truly help shape how we discuss about this topic. So my name is James Nyamai. I'm the founder and CEO of Bioafriq Energy, which is a social enterprise working to reduce post-harvest losses for farmers and improve incomes through clean energy food processing solutions in Kenya. I am a Commonwealth Fellow, and I am also an undergraduate with a degree in mechanical engineering, and later I pursued an MBA in global business sustainability with focus on social entrepreneurship. Now, that combination has helped shape how I work, how I build practical technologies, while also thinking deep about systems, markets, and long-term impact for the communities that we serve. I'm also a trained accountant, which I know, as you can imagine, becomes very useful once regulators and auditors enter the room. Our work started in Kenya and expanded into East Africa and is now moving into West Africa as well. So what I am sharing today is not just theory, but is lived experience from our work. And through this journey, one question has guided us. How do we scale impact across borders without losing purpose? When we talk about scaling impact across borders, it basically comes out as a success story in most cases, one of growth, replication, and expansion. But for us, this has actually been a point where purpose has truly been tested the most. As we grow, systems change, institutions differed, and cultural experiences shifted, and distance increased between us being the decision makers and the communities that we serve. This is where scaling stops being a strategic document, but becomes a leadership test for us. Today, I want to share a honest view of what this journey has looked like for us, the wins that we've had, the tensions that this expansion has brought, and the decisions behind them. Sorry. So our work having begun in Kenya, so we asked the big question, why do we need to scale in the first place? We started responding to very real challenges in Kenya, this being high post-harvest losses, unstable farmer incomes, and limited access to nutritious foods. But very quickly, we realized these challenges were not unique in Kenya. We started hearing other stories from other farmers in different countries, sometimes in different accents, but same problem. At that point, scaling stopped being an ambition, but it became a responsibility for us. The question shifted from, can we really scale, to how do we scale responsibly? As the solution proved effective in Kenya, interest began emerging across borders. First, it started with East Africa, and later West Africa. These regions are very different in terms of institutions, in terms of culture, and in terms of operations. We did not wake up one morning and decide, hey, let's just go continental. No, growth followed demand, and demand followed impact for us. That focused us to slow down, think carefully about how we grow. Before we go deep into the challenges, and it's important to pause and just ask, did this really work? How did this actually get to impact the communities that we serve? Across East and West Africa, we have so far served over 10,000 smallholder farmers, and we've seen up to 60% reduction in post-harvest losses for these farmers, and up to 40% improvement in their incomes, depending on the context and the product at hand. Behind every percentage is a household, a decision to stay in farming, and food that would otherwise have been lost. This is the part of the work that keeps us going, even when everything else gets complicated. The reality about scaling borders is real, and this is where our journey became more complex. Scaling across borders introduced real tension for us. Tension between moving fast and going deep. Tension between standardization and relevance in the different countries. And tension between growth and purpose There were moments when pressure to grow was real. More demand, more visibility, more expectations. At the same time, we could see cracks forming if we moved too fast. Gaps in training, not just internal, but also for the communities that we intend to serve in the other countries. Gaps in follow-ups and farmer readiness. We had to decide whether to push forward or pause and fix these foundations. Pausing was uncomfortable. Why? Because it meant slower growth. It meant slower income and revenue from the communities that we serve, but it protected the people that we serve the most. One important lesson that we learned in this experience of growing is that we do not change the innovation when we enter different countries. The core innovation remains the same across borders. What changes is how we introduce it, how it is adopted in those specific countries, and how it is supported to ensure that it creates the maximum benefits for the farmers that we serve. In one context, farmer groups were well organized and adoption was very fast. But in another, trust had to be built slowly, cup of tea after cup of tea, as we had to keep on converting them. The innovation worked in both places, but only after the adapted implementation. This meant working with diverse local teams and partners, because decisions made too far from context usually fail. And that is something that we learned as we expanded. The other lesson was unexpected challenges that we had to encounter. One of the most unexpected challenges we faced was regulatory. As we began operating across borders, certification became a requirement for export with the innovations that we deal with. Yet the standard that was required to certify these products, this innovation for quality, did not exist at that time. Our first reaction was frustration. We had demand, we had proof, but the system was not ready. The system was failing us. Waiting 1 year had real costs. It meant delayed revenue. It meant delayed expansion. But walking away would have meant exporting risk instead of quality, or using shortcuts that would have led us into problems. So we chose to invest in the system as well, even when it slowed us down, even when this was not part of what we had in mind when we wanted to expand. To move forward, we engaged standards bodies in the country. We also rallied partners and demonstrated real-world demand so that this could spark an interest in development of standards. This process required resources beyond what we ourselves as a company could carry. And we were supported by partners such as ACTS, African Center for Technology Studies, GIZ, and Kenya Climate Innovation Center, that are local organizations. The standards development process took 1 full year, not because the process was inefficient, but because standards are not built for just one company in the industry. They are built for an entire industry. At times it felt slow, but in hindsight, it was necessary for us to grow. And we had to get out of the comfort zone and get this done. As we moved into cross-border trade, we learned that trade frameworks matter. Different countries have different agreements. And so in East Africa, Trademark Africa created a platform that supported regional market access. We also underwent inspections by the Kenya Revenue Authority to verify local manufacturing, because this was part of the requirements of the agreement that they have within East Africa community. Customs officials had to visit us, audit our suppliers, audit our processes, look into our records, just to ascertain whether we actually really manufactured locally or we were just importing a technology and then wanting to trade with it within East Africa, duty-free. I guess this was not the most relaxing visit by the Kenya Revenue Authority, but it was necessary. Only after verification were we granted duty-free access within East Africa. We are now pursuing approval under the African Continental Free Trade Area. Beyond markets, partnerships also enable inclusion. In Sierra Leone, which is in West Africa, we partnered with the Sierra Leone Society of Autistic Persons to support persons living with autism who engage in farming activities. That partnership reminded us that scaling impact also means expanding who is included. Inclusivity is part of the key of social entrepreneurship and expansion. As we've grown, a few anchors have protected our purpose. These have been non-negotiable along the way. We have had non-negotiables around farmer values, the values that we support, the values that we stand for the farmers, so that we do not take shortcuts that lead us into problems. We have had to ensure local participation in every new context. We have had to rally partnerships that are well-rooted in the countries that we stretch into. Partnerships that also support the work that we do, because some of these things, including policy and all that, require a lot of partnerships. And sometimes you can't handle them as a company alone because they can drain your resources and kill your impact even before you're able to reach the target audience or the beneficiaries of the solutions that you're offering. Systems have had to carry purpose, and we have had to work towards designing systems that ensure that purpose is at the center of the systems that are being developed. This is actually one of the ways in which we have had to ensure that we maintain the purpose as to why we began in the first place. Who do we serve, and why do we serve them? Success for us has not just been revenue, has not just been making money and just expanding across the borders, but for us, it has been farmer outcomes. It has been the number of farmers that we've had to help, not just the numbers alone, but how easy it is for them to be able to access the innovations that we have been building for them. How easy it is for the systems to work for them and create the impact that is required. Because in most cases, when leadership cannot be present everywhere, systems must carry our purpose. I'd like to close this reflection, this conversation with a reflection before I open up to questions and answers. Scaling impact across borders is not about being present in many countries. Being present in many countries sometimes can really be something that we look forward to, something that is exciting for us as social entrepreneurs when we talk about scaling across borders. But for us, it has been about remaining accountable to the same people, regardless of the geography, being able to solve the problems that they have without changing purpose, without changing the innovation. Growth will stretch an organization, and it surely does. And as entrepreneurs, it's important to be ready for this kind of expansion and tension and stretch that will come with it. But purpose is what keeps it grounded. Purpose is what keeps it standing, even when everything else seems to be shaking around us. So thank you so much for your time and your attention and your presence. I truly appreciate that, the opportunity to share, and I look forward to your questions, and I'll be looking forward to answer them. Thank you so much. Let me take a hold of the question. There's one question from Alma. The question is, such great work. Thank you for the talk. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Are you worried that in future competitions will undercut you by using the system you build? How do you prepare for this? I think this is a very good question. One of the key things that we normally do is that we have actually patented all our innovations to ensure that we are able to guard ourselves against competition. But now with competition probably preparing to maybe use shortcuts to undercut our work, I believe that is something that really happens a lot. We talk of counterfeit products, but at the end of the day, the counterfeit products don't stand a long time in the market because of regulatory interventions. And in most cases, once you move through the right path, then you safeguard the market that you target. Even when regulatory changes do come into place, you find yourself in a safe place compared to those who have taken shortcuts. Sometimes, yes, shortcuts are very enticing, but in the long term, we are looking at the long term. In the long term, will you still be sustainable? One of the key things that we normally do as social entrepreneurs is that we don't just build social enterprises for them to last for just a year or two, but we build them to ensure that 10 years down the line, they can still be able to carry out the impact they were intended for in the first place. And so you need to pause and ask, am I running this social enterprise for just 2-3 years? Or am I running this social enterprise to ensure that it outlives me? It's able to continue carrying out the activities that it was created for. And so with that answers the question, do you take shortcuts or do you follow the right procedure? And by following that right procedure is what actually safeguards you in the future and ensures that you're in the right place when questions come up, when the market shakes, and when regulators enter the room, you're able to stand the test of ground. The second one from the same person, thank you for being so active. Also, how are you tracking your non-revenue success metrics? So one of the key things is that I mentioned about over 10,000 smallholder farmers, currently about 10,127 smallholder farmers, but that is just direct impact. There are households that are also involved in that. And whenever we do installations and deal with farmers, one of the key things that we do is that we have two different models. The key model is actually offering dehydration as a service to smallholder farmers. Most of the smallholder farmers find it quite difficult to actually invest in technology because of financial constraint. And so how do we overcome this? So we ensure that we set up dehydration centers, and then farmers just bring their produce. In the dehydration centers, they have different access to different things. One is the dehydration services, where they only pay a very minimal fee for dehydrating their products. But on top of that, they also have access to food safety laboratory tests, which is important to guarantee the quality of the dried products to the end consumer or the customer who will purchase this. The other thing is that through those centers, we also link them up to markets. We work with agricultural processors who offtake this produce, the dried produce. And so through that, we have data to show that the number of farmers who have actually benefited from our systems. On the other model, where we also carry out replication of our dehydration technologies, this replication is actually done through partners in other value chains. And so what happens is that we have a technical team that carries out installations. The equipment are actually manufactured in a way that they need to be assembled on ground for ease of transportation. And so when we deliver the products, most of them work with the farmers in groups. And so when we start up, we also get data from the same groups, how many farmers in the group were benefiting from that. We also later on pay them a visit just to establish how they are progressing and how they are benefiting from the innovation and the number of farmers who have come into play if the number has increased from the initial farmers. Because once you set up these technologies, new farmers actually join the group because of the benefits that are associated with that. And so we also make sure that we have those numbers. In other instances from partners that we have worked with, such as the German Agency for International Cooperation, GIZ Kenya, one of the ways in which they have also assisted us to actually verify this. So apart from just the data that we have, as part of the partnership that we have, they have also engaged PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, for verification of this data. And this does not just give us a confidence from our end, but also a third party being able to verify these success metrics for us. And that actually ensures that we have the data non-revenue success metrics that we are able to report. There is, I think I saw a chart or something. Yeah, I think there are a few things that have been posted in the chat. Let me just read them through. You emphasized that implementation cannot travel, even when the core innovation does. Could you share a specific example of how your implementation approach had to differ between East and West Africa, and what you learned about balancing standardization with local adaptation? Yeah, so one of the things that actually happened is that when we were moving from Kenya has different kinds of farm products. There's also the culture about how people adapt to new technologies. And so that is basically different from Uganda. There are different customers who would prefer relationships, not just direct relationships, but also from referrals from organizations that they trust. And that's why I talked about the trust aspect that is required and partnerships in those specific countries. Sometimes going into a certain country by your own, it becomes quite difficult. One, because people really don't know you. Secondly, there's a new innovation. How do they get to know that it's going to work? But with partners that you've worked with who are also present in those specific countries, and those partners actually are in touch with the target market, the beneficiaries that you intend to target, then it becomes quite easy for you to be able to tap onto them. East Africa is different. West Africa is different. So for West Africa, again, relationships come into play. And that is why it was necessary for us to link up with partners who are already in the ground, like the Sierra Leone Autistic Society. They are already in touch with the community. And so it becomes easier for them to refer our technology to the communities that we serve. Other cases, it's more about seeking financial partners in those specific countries because for replication purposes, we really don't fund the dehydration technology. So there are partners who actually buy the technologies, and then we do the setup and training for the farmers in those different value chains. And so again, on that other side, it's also important to also link up not just with partners who are already in touch with the community that you intend to serve, but also how do you also include financial partners in this journey who are also in touch with the target audience that you want to serve in those specific countries? And that really creates a good community and partnership that can be able to help you scale faster. I don't know if that answers the question, but if it doesn't, please feel free to post something that might need clarity. Let me just read the other one. How do you see this continental trade agreement changing the landscape for social enterprises like yours? And what practical steps are you taking now to position Bioafriq to benefit from these opportunities? That's a very interesting question because, again, it touches on regulatory, it touches on policy, and a lot is really changing across Africa. And now governments are beginning to actually adopt the concept of social entrepreneurship. I know in Kenya, we have a social entrepreneurship policy, not already active, but is currently being driven towards adoption by the government. But this is again a long-term policy, something that is going to take some time. Why? Because in developing the policy, they really want to make sure that not just anybody who comes and calls themselves a social enterprise benefits from that. So there's a lot of background check that is required, and this has to be clearly defined in the policies. And we have organizations that are seriously pushing for policies to safeguard social enterprises, not just in Kenya, but also across other African countries. And I've come across a few, and everything is shaping up towards the aspect of social entrepreneurship because one of the key things that Africa has realized is we need to eradicate poverty. But how do we eradicate poverty if we are not inclusive, if we are not helping social enterprises to thrive? Because it's through social enterprises that are able to have to get in touch with the communities that really need these solutions and elevate their livelihoods. And so there are so many policies that are coming up. And so we are shaping up around this by making sure that we are also part of the organizations that actually push for these policies and take part in the discussions around development of this policy. My co-founder is actually Doreen, my co-founder, and she's very active in terms of policy. Her background is legal, and so that's the area that she mainly majors in. And so she takes part in a lot of these activities for policy development, just to make sure that Bioafriq Energy is also aligned moving into the future when it comes to also social entrepreneurship. Another aspect that we also take to make sure that we are also able to tap onto these opportunities in the future is also making sure that we establish partnerships with organizations that actually drive aspects regarding social enterprises. A lot of things are changing in the ecosystem with regard to social enterprises. And it's important for also us as a team to keep up to date with some of these things. How do we position our processes? How do we position our innovations? How do we position our expansion in line with social entrepreneurship aspects so that even as the policies come into play, as audits are done to verify, are you really a social enterprise or you're just normal business that is just after profit? We can also be able to pass these tests and make sure that our systems are also credible when it comes to social entrepreneurship. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah, there are two other questions from Geoffrey. Is it possible to have an intellectual property for it? Is it possible to have an intellectual property right for it? Yes, it is possible. We have two active intellectual properties currently, and we are currently pursuing IPs for two other innovations that we came up with in the previous year. And this has actually been driven by the demand for the community that we serve. And so it is possible to have intellectual property for your innovations. And this actually helps safeguard your innovation as you scale across borders, making sure that you're able to actually do away with also counterfeit products that could actually damage your expansion in those countries. So the other question is, how do you deal with the political environment that can easily lead to its breakdown and failure, which is common in Africa? I think one of the key things that we make sure we don't engage in political activities. I think this has really been one of the things that has led into failure for most of the startups and social enterprises, because political activities do change. The political environment does change. But how do you ensure that you are grounded on systems and not the political environment? And that is why the systems, instead of using shortcuts, it's very important, because it's very difficult for systems to just change overnight because they have to change for an entire industry. But politics does change, and sometimes very fast. And so when you get involved in some of political activities, then that becomes quite an issue. The other thing is making sure that we are also grounded in real policies that actually safeguard also our interests. We make sure that we align ourselves with current trends in policies. And so that way it becomes very difficult for us to be affected by political environments. I know sometimes this can actually affect movement because we deal a lot with farmers. And basically, whenever there are political clashes, again, that creates a very challenging environment for us to be able to move our innovations from one place to another. But one of the key things that we actually endeavor, it's a force that is actually beyond us, but we try as much as possible to just make sure that we are not caught up in such kind of political environments, and just make sure that the partners that we work with on ground, we are able to have first-hand information of any political changes in the environment that could otherwise affect our operations. And so through that, we are able to actually analyze the risks and see ways in which you can be able to mitigate this kind of risk depending on the context at that specific time. Yes, I don't know if I've answered your question, Geoffrey. Yeah, I think I've been able to respond to most of the questions, actually all the questions. Yeah, thank you, Geoffrey, for confirming that. Yeah, so thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate that. And should you have any further questions, I think, or any things that you'd like to learn, I think I'll share my email on the chat, and you can feel free to get in touch with me. So thank you so much. Back to you, Lindah.
Wow, that was an amazing, amazing presentation. Thank you so much, James, for grounding us in real world experience, and also for just giving us that overview of the challenges and opportunities encountered when trying to expand social enterprises internationally. For me, I would say my key takeaway from your presentation, which I think applies to all areas of our work, is that shortcuts are an easy way, but are they sustainable? Yeah, shortcuts are easy, but are they sustainable? Thank you once again for that amazing presentation and for the impact you're making at Bioafriq Energy Limited. We really appreciate you for that. Everyone, remember to please use the Q&A box, and for all your questions, we'll continue to respond to them. And also you can make comments on the presentations that are going to be made here. And now we can turn structural barriers into lived realities. I would like to now welcome and introduce our panel moderator. This session will be closing, and you can go to the events lobby and join our panel discussion, which will be on breaking barriers, women and marginalized voices in social enterprises. So I would like now to invite you to join the next session, where our moderator, James Otai, who is the co-founder and director of sustainability and operations at Imagine Her, will be facilitating that panel discussion.